We are counting down the 15 most unmistakable signs that life was not easy for Black families growing up in the 1970s. From resourceful kitchen tools and creative ways to stretch a dollar, to household habits and objects that spoke volumes about resilience and thrift, these entries reveal the daily realities behind the statistics. Some of these markers were hiding in plain sight, while others took a sharp eye to spot. But which silent signal tops them all? Let us begin the countdown with number 15. Tucked away in kitchen drawers or wedged between cookbooks, S and H green stamp books were a quiet fixture in many Black households during the 1970s. These little green stamps came from grocery stores and gas stations. Each purchase earned a few, pasted carefully into the savings books. The ritual was familiar. Children licking stamps, mothers counting pages, everyone hoping for a full book by the year's end. Once enough books stacked up, the S&H catalog became a wish list. Towels, cookware, maybe a new toaster. These weren't bought outright. They were earned through months of saving stamps, one shopping trip at a time. For families without access to traditional savings accounts or credit, these stamps became a kind of homegrown bank, trading patience and persistence for small comforts. A full book didn't just mean a new dish set. It was proof that every penny spent could stretch a little further. In a world where every dollar mattered, green stamps offered a glimmer of possibility, one pasted square at a time. Brown paper grocery bags were never just for carrying food home from the store. In the 1970s, these bags became one of the most versatile tools in a Black household where nothing went to waste. After groceries were unpacked, the bags were flattened, smoothed by hand, and tucked away for their next life. School lunches were packed in them, no branded lunchbox needed. The crinkle of the brown paper was a familiar sound in the classroom, sometimes with a name scrawled across the front in black marker. When textbooks came home, those same bags were cut open and folded into makeshift book covers, protecting borrowed pages from wear and tear. Some families lined kitchen shelves with them or used them to store winter clothes in old letters. Unlike plastic containers that cost money, brown bags came free with every shopping trip and were used until they fell apart. In a world where every penny mattered, even the packaging was pressed into service, proving that thrift could be found in the simplest things. The Sears Wish Book arrived like a holiday in the mailbox, its glossy pages promising everything from winter coats to shiny new appliances. For many Black families in the 1970s, flipping through that catalog was both a ritual and a lesson in patience. Cash was tight, and traditional credit cards were often out of reach, so mail order shopping and layaway became the main path to bigger purchases. The process was simple but strict. Pick out the item, put down a small deposit at the local store, and make steady payments, sometimes over months, before you could finally bring it home. Coats, bunk beds, washing machines, and even bicycles waited in the back room until every dollar was paid. There was no instant gratification, only the discipline of budgeting and the satisfaction of finally picking up something earned bit by bit. Layaway was not just about getting new things. It was a system built for families who had to plan, save, and stretch every cent, making each purchase a quiet celebration of perseverance. Every living room told its own story, and in the 1970s, the furniture spoke volumes. Sofas with faded arms, chairs that didn't match, and coffee tables with wobbly legs were a common sight in Black households where money had to stretch. Most pieces didn't come from a showroom. They came from church donation drives, a neighbor's moving day, or thrift stores on the edge of downtown. Sometimes an aunt or cousin would drop off a chair they no longer needed, and it would find a new home next to a couch upholstered in a patchwork of hand-stitched fabric. Upholstery wasn't just a craft, it was a necessity. Families would fix rips with whatever material was at hand, Old curtains, denim, or even flour sacks, turning each repair into a small act of care. These rooms rarely had matching sets, but every piece had a story and a purpose. The mix of colors, patterns, and textures wasn't about style. It was about making do, about community, and about the quiet pride of keeping a home together, no matter how little money was coming in. Hand-me-down clothes carried their own history, passed from one sibling to the next, sometimes even crossing cousins or neighbors before finding a final home. In the 1970s, new clothes were a rare luxury for many Black families. Instead, a child's Sunday dress might have its hem let out twice, or a pair of jeans would sport patches on both knees, sometimes stitched with bright thread that stood out, sometimes with careful needlework meant to blend in. Mothers and grandmothers kept sewing kits close at hand, filled with buttons saved from worn-out shirts and scraps of fabric cut from clothes too far gone to repair. Learning to sew wasn't just a hobby, it was a skill passed down, often taught to daughters early, but picked up by sons too when needed. Each repair was a small act of pride, proof that nothing was wasted and that care could make something last another season. Hand-me-downs weren't just about saving money, they were evidence of a family's resourcefulness and the quiet strength found in making do. Every patched elbow and replaced button told a story of thrift, love, and the invisible network that held families together. Cast iron skillets and enamelware pans were the backbone of budget cooking in a Black household during the 1970s. These heavy pans could handle anything, frying, baking, simmering, and they lasted for generations. Many families used the same skillet their grandmother once used, its surface darkened from years of seasoning and meals cooked on a tight budget. A cast iron skillet wasn't just a pan, it was a workhorse. It browned cheap cuts of meat, turned scraps of pork fat into golden drippings, and crisped the edges of cornbread until it sang with flavor. Enamelware, with its chipped edges and bright colors, held stews and beans that simmered for hours, stretching a small amount of meat into a meal for the whole family. Bacon grease and lard were saved in coffee cans near the stove, ready to be spooned into the skillet for the next meal. Nothing was wasted, and every meal was built on the foundation of tools that could take the heat day after day. The cast iron skillet was more than a kitchen staple, it was a symbol of resilience and thrift, and the quiet art of making something out of almost nothing. The pressure cooker sat on the back burner like a secret weapon, hissing and rattling its warning with every meal. In the 1970s, as food prices soared and gas bills climbed higher each month, this heavy pot became a lifeline in Black kitchens. Tough cuts of meat, oxtail, gizzards, neck bones could be turned tender in under an hour instead of simmering all afternoon and burning through precious fuel. The whistle that pierced the house was not just a sound, it was a promise that dinner would be ready soon, even if the meat came from the bottom shelf at the butcher shop. Pressure cookers from companies like Presto and Miro were passed down or picked up secondhand, sometimes with the rubber gasket already cracked, but still good enough to get the job done. Stories circulated about lids flying off if you were not careful, so every cook learned to respect the steam and double-check the release valve. Saving time meant saving money, and every shortcut counted when inflation made every dollar feel smaller. With just a little water and a lot of patience, the pressure cooker stretched ingredients and budgets alike, setting the stage for the next round of meal stretching recipes that kept families fed through the hardest years. Stretching a meal in the 1970s took more than just a good recipe, it took creativity and a deep understanding of how to turn humble ingredients into something nourishing. With youth unemployment at nearly 28%, many families relied on organ meats and butcher scraps that cost far less than prime cuts. Chicken gizzards, livers, and necks, often overlooked at the store, became the base for stews and gravies that could feed a crowd. Ham hocks, smoked and salty, transformed a pot of pinto beans or collard greens into a meal that filled stomachs and stretched over several days. Rice and beans were bought in bulk, served alongside almost everything, and flavored with whatever fat or seasoning was on hand. Cornbread, made from just cornmeal, salt, and water, appeared at nearly every table, sometimes with bits of crackling folded in for extra richness. Even the drippings from fried meat were saved to make giblet gravy, poured over rice or biscuits to make the most of every scrap. These dishes did not just fill plates, they carried the wisdom of generations, proving that good food could come from thrift, patience, and a little bit of ingenuity. Kitchen chairs doubled as barber stools in Black households during the 1970s. When money was tight, a trip to the barbershop where a simple cut could cost $5 or more was out of reach for many families. Instead, the family clippers came out, often shared between siblings and cousins, the buzz echoing through the house on Saturday mornings. A kitchen towel became a makeshift barber's cape, tucked around the neck as someone's mom, dad, or older sibling got to work. Fades and lineups were learned by trial and error, with uneven patches smoothed over and jokes traded back and forth. Scissors snipped, clippers hummed, and the smell of hair oil mixed with the scent of Sunday dinner cooking nearby. These home haircuts weren't just about saving money. They were about trust, patience, and learning a skill that might last a lifetime. In a world where every dollar had to stretch, skipping the barbershop meant more money for groceries or the light bill, and everyone took pride in a fresh cut, even if it wasn't perfect. Coupon clipping was a family ritual that turned Sunday mornings into strategy sessions. The kitchen table would disappear under a sea of newspaper inserts, each page promising a few cents off bread, canned goods, or laundry soap. Mothers and grandmothers became experts at stacking deals, matching clip coupons with store sales, circling the best prices in the weekly circular, and planning meals around what was cheapest that week. Expiration dates mattered, so coupons were sorted and filed, sometimes in battered envelopes or shoe boxes, ready for the next trip to the store. On double coupon days, every clipped rectangle felt like a small victory, stretching a dollar just a little bit further. Children got involved too, cutting out coupons with dull scissors, learning early how to spot a bargain. The savings added up, sometimes $1 or $2 each week, which meant more food on the table or a little extra for the light bill. Coupon culture wasn't just about pinching pennies, it was a lesson in resourcefulness, discipline, and making the most out of what little was available. Every shopping trip became a test of skill, with each saved cent proof that careful planning could make a real difference. On Sunday afternoons, the church basement or a neighbor's backyard would fill with the smells of fried fish, fresh rolls, and sweet tea. These weren't just meals, they were lifelines. Potlucks brought together families who each brought what they could, sometimes a pan of macaroni and cheese, sometimes just a few cans of beans. No one left hungry, and everyone left with a sense of belonging. Church bulletins listed clothing drives and food pantries, calling for donations or inviting those in need. A well-worn dress or a winter coat would find a second life, passed from one family to another with quiet dignity. Babysitting was handled by whoever was available, an older cousin, a neighbor, or the church deacon's wife, because formal childcare was out of reach for most. Fish fry fundraisers helped cover medical bills or utility shutoff notices, with the whole neighborhood pitching in for the cause. Tools and lawnmowers were shared across fences, and if someone needed a loan until payday, it was the church or a neighbor who stepped up. These networks of mutual aid weren't just about charity, they were about survival, about making sure no one faced hard times alone. In neighborhoods where jobs were scarce and banks said no, community and church became the safety net that held everyone up. A broken heel or a busted toaster didn't mean it was time to buy new. It meant it was time to find someone who could fix it. In Black neighborhoods during the 1970s, local cobblers kept shoes on feet for a fraction of the cost of a new pair. Resoling a favorite pair of Sunday shoes could cost just a quarter of what it took to buy them brand new, and many families made those repairs stretch for years. Appliance repair shops dotted the main streets, run by men and women who knew how to coax another year out of a washing machine or a set of clippers. Salvaging parts from broken radios or blenders was common, and if a repairman couldn't be found, families often tried their own hand with a screwdriver and a roll of electrical tape. Tailors and seamstresses, sometimes working out of their homes, patched zippers, hemmed skirts, and made hand-me-downs look almost new. Repair wasn't just about saving money. It was about keeping comfort and dignity alive, using skill and patience to make the most of what you already had. In a world where every dollar had to count, repair culture was both an economic strategy and a quiet act of pride. The television set in a Black household during the 1970s was more than just a piece of furniture. It was a family gathering point and a lesson in compromise. Most homes made do with a single TV set, often an old console model with dials that clicked and a picture that faded in and out. Scheduling who got to watch what was a nightly negotiation, especially when everyone wanted to catch their favorite show. If the screen flickered or a knob broke, a little patience and sometimes a pair of pliers kept things running. New TV sets were expensive, so repairs and workarounds were the norm. Music brought its own set of rituals. Vinyl records were precious, and a scratch could ruin a favorite song. Scotch tape patched up cracked albums, and if a record skipped, someone might gently balance a penny on the needle arm to coax it along. When money was tight, kids recorded songs straight off the radio onto blank cassette tapes, waiting with fingers poised to hit record as soon as a hit came on. These homemade mixtapes and patched up records turned every living room into a small concert hall, proving that joy did not depend on new gadgets or perfect sound, just a little creativity and a willingness to share. Summer heat pressed through every wall, and winter cold seeped in no matter how tightly the windows were shut. In Black households during the 1970s, comfort depended on ingenuity, not on the thermostat. Central air and whole house heating were out of reach for most families. Instead, a boxy window fan would be wedged into the frame, humming through the night to draw in the slightest breeze. On sweltering days, the only relief might come from sitting right in front of that fan, sweat drying as the blades spun. When cold weather arrived, a single space heater was often the only defense against the chill. Families gathered in the warmest room, doors draped with blankets to keep the heat from escaping, everyone bundled in sweaters and socks. Sometimes the kitchen oven was left on after dinner, its warmth spilling out as children did their homework at the table. Every decision about comfort came with a calculation. How much would it add to the light bill? Could the family afford to run the heater another hour? The energy crisis of the decade made those choices even harder, as utility costs soared and every extra degree meant another sacrifice. In these homes, comfort was not taken for granted. It was carefully rationed, a daily negotiation with the budget, and a reminder that even the air you breathe could be a luxury. A household ledger sat on the kitchen table, its pages filled with careful handwriting, columns for groceries, rent, and every light bill, each expense recorded down to the penny. Next to it, envelopes held cash for every necessity, one for food, one for gas, another for school clothes or the church offering. Every dollar had a job, and there was no room for mistakes. Grocery lists were planned with military precision, meals mapped out for the week, and bills crossed off as they were paid. Sometimes a layaway ticket, finally marked paid in full, would be glued inside, a quiet celebration of months of sacrifice. This was not just budgeting, it was survival with no margin for error. The ledger told the whole story of discipline, hope, and a family's determination to make every cent count, even when the numbers never quite added up. Across all 15 entries, one pattern stands out. Poverty in the 1970s forced Black families to turn hardship into resourcefulness. Every substitute, workaround, and shared sacrifice was an act of survival shaped by systemic barriers. That ingenuity still echoes today, reminding us that resilience isn't a choice, it is a necessity when opportunity remains unequal. Thanks for watching. Share your memories or thoughts in the comments.